Everyone shows you the result, the 5 a.m. routine, the clean kitchen, the 6-figure months, but nobody shows you what it actually looked like while they were still trying to build the thing while still in a job. I'm going to give you the real version, the messy one, because the gap between what we see online and what it actually looks like is humongous. And it's probably the reason why a lot of people give up too soon. You're probably watching someone right now. Maybe it's a woman on your feed who wakes up at 5 a.m., opens her laptop, films her morning building session with lo-fi music in the background. Maybe it's a LinkedIn post from someone who left their corporate job 6 months ago and is now talking about 6-figure months. Or maybe it's the podcast guest who describes leaving as the best decision they ever made, who makes the before and after sound like the most natural thing in the world. And you're sitting there after a full day of work, absolutely drained, wondering like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because your evenings don't look like that. And here's what I want to tell you. Nothing is wrong with you. What you are seeing is the version they decided to show. That lo-fi morning session, the clean kitchens, the before and after arcs, that's the edited version. And that's the one that makes for a good Instagram post or a good caption. The things that actually work, the things that got me out of corporate, probably looked a lot like what you're living through. Messy, slow, interrupted, because a lot of people decide not to try and build the thing outside of work because they say things like, oh, I just don't have the time. But it's usually not really about time at all. It's about energy, because we all know corporate jobs are draining, and they're draining in a very specific way. It's not just the hours, it's being switched on for someone else's agenda all day. It's the context switching between meetings you didn't choose, between emails that require specific diplomatic responses, between managing upwards and sideways and across in a way that costs something even when it looks effortless from the outside. And by the time most people get home from a demanding job, they've already given the majority of what they had. And then they try to sit down and build something. Like, it's not possible. The mistake I see people make over and over is trying to build in the same gear they use for work. They are showing up to their own project with the same intensity or expecting the same focus or the same standard of output that they bring to their employer. And when they can't access that, because of course you can't, because the well is already depleted, they conclude that they're not capable of doing both, that they're not the kind of person who can make this work. And that conclusion is wrong because the method is wrong. What I learned slowly and through a lot of wasted evenings staring at a blank screen is that building alongside a full-time job requires a completely different relationship to effort. It means lower intensity, shorter windows, less ambition per session, because the goal is not necessarily to produce something extraordinary in a 2-hour evening sprint after a 10-hour workday. The goal is just to keep the thing alive. And I'm a big believer in low effort consistency over high effort bursts, because lowering the barrier to entry is the only thing that actually sustains momentum over time. A 20-minute session you actually do is worth more than a 2-hour deep work block you keep rescheduling. Some weeks I did one thing, just one thing that moved something forward, sent the email, finished one section of something, had one conversation. And at the time, that felt like failure. But looking back, those were the weeks that kept the whole dream going, okay? It kept the whole thing moving, even when I had nothing to give. And I'm going to be real with you, some weeks were really slow. There were many evenings I opened my laptop to do something and just slam that thing closed again because I was just like, I can't do this. But that is what it actually looks like. You don't need more energy. You need to stop asking yourself to build in the same way you work, because the goal is not to move fast. The goal is just to not quit. And don't get me wrong, the energy issue is real, but it's manageable once you adjust your expectations. The mental one is trickier because it's not just about how tired you are. It's about where your head is, even when your body is sitting in front of your own work. Your job doesn't just stop when you close the laptop. It runs in the background. The Slack message you're waiting on, the performance review that's coming up, or the project that went sideways and you're going to have a follow-up conversation tomorrow, or the colleague that keeps working your last nerve. All of it is still live. It's still occupying mental space. Even when you're physically sitting in your kitchen with your own work open in front of you, there's a part of your brain that is still at the office. And that quality of focus, the fact that you bring your whole brain to solving these problems, is why you are good at your job. And simultaneously, the reason why your brain finds it hard to switch off. And this is why so many people sit down to work on their own thing and end up working on job tasks instead. The job is just louder and more familiar. It's easy to default to solving those problems that you kind of know how to do because it fills our brains with dopamine. It makes us feel like we're being productive. Your own thing is uncertain, undefined. It requires you to figure out what to do next rather than execute on something already clear. So when you're tired, the familiar is always going to win over the uncertain unless you have some sort of structure that helps you get over that threshold. So what helped me was understanding that mental compartmentalization, well, that's a long word, is a skill and is something that gets easier the more you practice it. So practically, that meant creating rituals that helped me mark the transition. So not elaborate ones, something small that told my brain we're switching context now. So for a while, that meant a 10-minute walk between finishing work and starting my own thing. Sometimes it was putting on a specific playlist or physically moving to a different room or opening a different laptop. The content of the ritual matters less than the consistency of it. It also meant being honest about when I had nothing left, because there were evenings where the job had taken everything and there was genuinely no context to switch to. And on those evenings, then the best thing you can do is rest and not force it, because forcing it produces bad work and bad feelings, and neither of those are going to move anything forward. So when I was building alongside my job, the windows were small. I had maybe 20 minutes before I got to the desk in the morning, or a lunch hour maybe 2 to 3 times a week, or maybe the occasional Sunday morning before the day got going. That was it. There was no dedicated 3-hour deep work block. There was no, I protect these hours for my own work, because my job didn't really allow for that. And honestly, I didn't have the energy for it, even when I technically had the time. So I figured out the mornings were my best window, because the day hadn't yet taken anything from me yet. So once I got into the office, I often lost control of my day. You know, calls happened, things escalated, the agenda I'd set for myself got overwritten by someone else's problems or someone else's urgent. So the only time that was consistently mine was before all of that started. Now, not everyone is going to have that morning window. Some people are useless before 9 a.m. and are better at night. The point is not when, it's just figuring out which part of your day is still yours and protecting that. And I gotta be honest, there were weeks where nothing happened, a difficult period at work or a family thing, or just a feeling like I had nothing left and nothing moved forward. Sometimes that happened for days. And for a long time, those stretches felt like evidence that I wasn't serious enough, like I didn't want this bad enough. But what I eventually understood is that the project or the thing that I was trying to build didn't reset every time I was absent from it. The work had stayed done. The client was still signed. The thing was still being built. The gaps in activity are not the same as regression. The progress was not necessarily linear. There were months where I felt like I was barely moving, and then something would shift, a client referral, a piece of work that came together, or a conversation that opened a door, and then the trajectory would change. And those shifts weren't random. They were the result of all the small, unimpressive, consistent moves that I've been doing for months behind the scenes that were quietly compounding. It just didn't look like that when I was in the trenches. And the moment I knew something had genuinely changed was not the day I left. It was earlier than that. It was the morning I sat in my regular team meeting and realized, oh, I'm not anxious about the things that I used to be anxious about anymore. The things my manager said, the internal politics, the uncertainty about what was coming, all of it had kind of lost its grip, because I stopped caring so much, because I knew what I was working on was valuable and was giving me options. And that's the reframe I want to offer, that I think changes everything about how this period of building while you're still employed feels, because most people frame the job as the obstacle. They think that's the thing standing between them and the life that they want, the thing draining all their energy that they need to build whatever's next. And I get that, because it does feel like that from the inside, especially when you know you want something different or you know you want more. But what's also true is right now, while you're still employed, your salary is covering your life, your rent, your food, your bills, the lifestyle you've built. And that means the pressure on whatever you're building outside of it is lower than it will ever be, ever again. You do not need this to work immediately. You don't need your first client to be the thing that pays your mortgage. You can afford to be patient, to iterate, to get it wrong before you get it right. And that runway is priceless. The skills you are using every day in your job, the ones that feel ordinary because you've been doing them for years, you're still actively sharpening them. You're not just employed, you're getting paid to keep developing the expertise that you are starting to sell elsewhere. Every complex project, every difficult stakeholder, every high pressure deliverable is adding to the thing you are building outside. And the people around you, your colleagues, your clients, the professional network that is warm and alive right now, those might be your first buyers or referrals. That network is most accessible to you while you're still in the room. So don't take that for granted. And I'm not saying stay longer than is useful. I'm saying that while you are still there, the job is not just the thing you're trying to leave. It's funding the build. It's sharpening the tools. It's keeping you in the room with the people who are most likely to pay you first. When I started seeing it that way, my relationship to my job changed. I stopped resenting it for what it was costing me and started using it for what it was giving me. Now, I'm not going to lie, this didn't make the job better, but it made me a damn sight less miserable inside it. And it made me more strategic about how I was moving, because nobody who successfully built something alongside a full-time job has done it cleanly. There is no version of this story where someone managed their energy perfectly at all times, maintained a consistent schedule, felt good about how they were splitting their attention, and arrived at the exit without guilt or doubt or weeks where nothing happened. The people who got out were not necessarily the ones with the best systems, or the ones who woke up at 5 a.m. every day, or the ones who gave up every single weekend, or had this secret discipline that the rest of us lack. They were the ones who just kept going in imperfect conditions long enough for the outside income to become real, long enough for the trajectory to change, long enough for the job to stop feeling like the only option. So if you're doing this right now, employed, building, moving slowly, inconsistently, guilty, not sure if you're doing it right, and you want someone in your corner who has been exactly where you are, I do have a few slots available for my one-on-one coaching. The application link is below this video. You don't have to figure this whole thing out alone. You just have to figure out the next move. And sometimes that is a lot easier when you're talking to someone who has already done it. If any of this sounded like your life right now, drop a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.